I opened the mailbox and saw two terrified blue eyes staring back at me. At first, I didn't believe what I was seeing. A flash of white fur, the slow blink of pain, the shallow rise and fall of a rib cage pressed against cold steel. The Arizona sun blazed overhead, heating every surface like an oven. And inside that tiny locked mailbox on the edge of Maple Drive in Flagstaff was a puppy, a German Shepherd puppy, white as snow, maybe 3 months old, barely big enough to fill the corner of the box. His nose was dry and cracked, and he made a faint rasping sound. Not a bark, not a whine, just a struggle. I'm Tom, 43. I've walked this route every weekday for 11 years. I know every porch swing, every crooked fence post. I've seen dogs behind gates and on leashes, barking, wagging, living. But this was something else. The mailbox was sealed shut, a heavy metal latch locking the heat in like a coffin. My satchel slipped off my shoulder as I dropped to my knees. There was no water bowl, no blanket, nothing but an old advertisement crumpled under his side, and a single detail I can't get out of my head. A bright blue chew toy wedged into the corner like someone left it as a final insult. He tried to lift his head but couldn't. His eyes just stared at me, pale, icy, almost glowing in the dark steel box. I remember whispering, "Hold on, buddy. I've got you." And I yanked on the latch once, twice before realizing it was locked from the outside. I looked around. No one on the street, just heat waves rising from the sidewalk. No sound except the low whimper from that box. I dug into my pocket, pulled out my utility key ring, the one we use for parcel lockers, and prayed it would work. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped them. Come on, I muttered, my pulse thudding in my ears. The key clicked. I opened the door and he fell into my arms like a bag of bones. But was I already too late? He didn't move. For one sickening moment, I thought I was holding a body. His fur was scorching hot from the metal, but his limbs were limp, head lolled to the side. I pressed my fingers to his ribs, barely a flutter. Then a weak twitch of his paw, a breath. Hey, you're okay now," I whispered, but I wasn't sure if I was trying to calm him or myself. I laid him down gently on the grass beside the mailbox, shielding his tiny frame from the sun with my mailbag. He let out the softest sound, half wheeze, half cry, and tried to nuzzle into the canvas. His whole body trembled. He smelled like rust and sweat and plastic. His tongue was pale, and his eyes fluttered open only to close again seconds later. Around his neck hung a cheap, dirty collar with a bent metal tag. I squinted at it, brushing dirt away with my thumb. One word, barely legible under a layer of grime. Loki. I looked down at him. "Loki, that's your name. No tag for an owner, no phone number, no address, just a name." And the image burned into my mind of him, stuffed in that box like forgotten junk mail. I yanked out my phone and called the vet I knew across town, Dr. Saunders. He'd patched up more than one lost pet for me over the years. "Emergency," I told him. "Puppy, heat stroke, German Shepherd, maybe 3 months. Bring him now," was all he said. I cradled Loki in both arms, his fur burning against my skin. He didn't weigh more than a couple pounds. He didn't lift his head. I ran past trimmed lawns, barking dogs, garden gnomes, watching silently as I flew past. My truck was 3 blocks away, and I made it in one. As I laid him in the passenger seat, I caught one last glimpse of the mailbox in the side mirror. Locked, quiet, like it had never held a life inside it at all. But who would do this and why? The vet didn't even ask questions when I burst through the door. They saw Loki's limp body and rushed him straight to the back, shouting vitals, grabbing fluids, hooking him up to machines that beeped far too quietly for my comfort. I stood there in the lobby, fists clenched, shirt soaked in sweat, my mailbag still slung over one shoulder like I just delivered someone their electricity bill. But this wasn't just another stop on my route. This felt personal. "Tom," came a voice. "Doctor Saunders, gay-haired, sharp-eyed." He took one look at me and didn't bother with pleasantries. "Tell me everything." I tried to explain, but my mouth kept catching on the words. Mailbox locked, no air, no water. He was inside for God knows how long. Dr. Saunders didn't blink. "We'll do everything we can." And then he disappeared behind swinging doors, leaving me staring at a wall of leashes and pet food and toys that looked too bright, too clean, too alive. I sank into a chair. My legs finally gave out from under me. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I don't know. I just sat there with that image flashing behind my eyelids, two glowing blue eyes in the dark. Eventually, a young tech returned. She smiled gently, but there was tension in her jaw. "He's stable, but it's close. Severe dehydration, early signs of heat stroke. You found him just in time." I nodded, trying to swallow the knot in my throat. "Can I see him?" She led me back into a quiet recovery room. Loki was wrapped in a soft towel, a tiny IV in his leg, nose twitching as he rested in a shallow plastic bed. One of those bright blue eyes cracked open as I stepped in. "Hey there, buddy," I whispered. He didn't move, but he didn't look away. I sat beside him, slowly reaching out. My hand hovered for a moment before gently resting near his paw. He didn't pull away. "That was something. He needs a name for the records," the text said softly. "He has one," I replied without thinking. "It's Loki," she smiled. "Fighter, huh?" "Yeah," I said, my voice breaking just a little. "The kind that doesn't give up, even when he's trapped in a metal box and the world forgets him." But I hadn't forgotten, and I wouldn't. Not until I found out who did this. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that metal mailbox. I heard the soft scrape of his paw against the steel. I saw the way his body collapsed into mine. Lifeless, silent. The next morning, I was back at the clinic before the sun even touched the edge of the hills. Loki was awake, weak, but alert. He lifted his head a little when I walked in, and for the first time I saw his tail twitch just once. "Hey, champ," I murmured, crouching beside his crate. He blinked slowly at me like he wasn't sure if I was real or just another dream. The text had cleaned him up. His white coat still looked dull, but the grime was gone. His ears were too big for his head, his paws too big for his legs. Typical German Shepherd puppy proportions, like nature hadn't finished drawing him yet, and those eyes still impossibly blue, still haunted. "He's a lucky one," the vet said, stepping into the room. "Another hour in that heat and we'd be having a different conversation." I swallowed hard. "He's not microchipped," Saunders added. "No ID except that tag. Someone dumped him, Tom. I already knew that. But hearing it aloud hit different. Someone looked at this puppy, this breathing, blinking, trusting creature, and saw trash." I felt something twist in my chest. Not just anger, something deeper, guilt. Because what if I'd missed him? What if I hadn't heard the sound from the box? What if I delivered the mail, whistled my way down the street, and driven off, leaving him to die in silence? "I want to help," I said. "I want to be the one who sees this through." Dr. Saunders nodded. "Then start by giving him a safe place to rest. Take him home when he's ready. He'll need time and patience." Patience I could do. What I wasn't prepared for was what happened next. Because when I walked into work that morning and told my supervisor what had happened, he just stared at me. "Tom," he said slowly, "that's not the only report." My gut dropped. "What do you mean?" "We got a call. Another carrier other side of town said he heard whimpering inside a community mailbox cluster." I stared at him. No, it couldn't be. Was there more than one? I stood frozen, the words refusing to land. "Another puppy? Another mailbox? Did they find one?" I asked, my voice low, almost afraid of the answer. My supervisor nodded grimly. Carrier said by the time he got it open, it was too late. A cold wave ran through me. Same city, same week, same method. It wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern. That evening, I sat beside Loki at home, my living room quiet, except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the soft rhythm of his breath. He was curled up in a towel-lined crate, the smallest bundle of life you can imagine, but somehow heavier than everything else in my world. I watched him sleep, that tiny chest rising and falling, and my mind raced. Someone out there had put him in that box on purpose. Someone had sealed that metal door and walked away. And someone had done it again. But why? What kind of person uses a mailbox as a cage? Or worse, a coffin? Loki stirred in his sleep, letting out a faint yelp. Uh, I reached in and laid a hand gently on his back. His fur was warmer now. Real warmth, not fever or metal heat. You're safe now, I whispered. But I need to know. I need to find out who left you. I couldn't stop thinking about the chew toy. That ridiculous bright blue thing stuffed into the corner of the box. It hadn't been an accident. That was intentional, deliberate. Someone left it like a twisted signature. The next morning, I made a call to Officer Ramirez at the Flagstaff PD, someone I knew from delivering to the station for years. He listened quietly as I explained everything. Then he said, "You're not the only one asking questions, Tom. We've had 3 similar calls in the last 2 weeks, all within city limits. Only one survivor. Yours?" The floor seemed to tilt under me. 3. "How's the puppy?" he asked. I looked down at Loki, lying beside my feet on a soft blanket. One ear still flopped sideways. He looked up at me, his gaze calm but watchful. "He's hanging in," I said. "Good. You let me know if you remember anything else. Anything odd on your route? Any strange vehicles? Cameras on porches? We're pulling everything we can." I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Loki looked at me with those impossible eyes, and I realized he wasn't just a victim. He might be the only witness. For the first time in years, I saw my route differently. Every mailbox looked like a threat, every corner a question, every porch light a silent witness that might have seen too much or nothing at all. I kept my eyes open that whole week, checked every cluster box twice, looked for anything unusual. Scratches near locks, leftover debris, signs that someone had tampered with them. But it was Loki who noticed it first. It was Thursday morning. I brought him along for a short ride, windows down, air cool and clean after the early rain. He sat bundled in the passenger seat, still fragile but curious now, more alert. His head turned toward the window at every passing sound. We were halfway through Oakview Lane when he started whining, soft at first, then louder. I slowed down. "What is it, buddy?" He scrambled clumsily to the window, paws on the edge, tail twitching in short, stiff movements. I pulled over. We were in front of an abandoned rental property, overgrown yard, mailbox cluster at the curb, one of the old models with rounded doors. Loki was shaking, not from fear, from tension. Focus. His nose was twitching. I stepped out and approached the mailbox slowly. The sun was rising behind me, throwing long shadows across the concrete. The metal was cool to the touch, still damp from the night. I opened the door closest to the ground, empty. Second box, empty. Third, something blue. My breath hitched. It was another chew toy. Same shape, same color, lying alone on the bottom of the mailbox like a clue waiting to be found. I didn't touch it. I backed up and called Ramirez. By the time the squad car arrived, Loki had curled up in my passenger seat, watching me through the windshield, eyes wide and unblinking. "You were right," Ramirez said, holding the toy up with gloved hands. "This isn't over." He looked at Loki. "That pup's not just a survivor, he's a tracker." I glanced back at him, curled in that blanket like he owned the world. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew whoever did this wasn't counting on the dog living. They definitely weren't counting on the dog remembering. That night I watched Loki dream. His legs twitched, ears flicked, a soft sound escaping his throat, somewhere between a bark and a breath. I sat beside him on the floor, a cold cup of coffee in my hand, the rest of the world forgotten. It hit me then. He wasn't just recovering, he was reassembling, piece by piece, emotion by emotion. He was starting to trust me, to trust the world again. And I couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to tell me something. The way he'd reacted to that mailbox on Oakview Lane, ears up, muscles locked like he knew, wasn't instinct. It was memory. I pulled out my laptop, opened a blank document, and started mapping out the confirmed cases. First incident, mailbox near Cedar Hill. Found too late. Second, Loki. Third, reported by the other carrier. Same outcome. Fourth, Oakview Lane. No dog, just the toy. 4 locations, all within a 5-meter radius. All near older mailbox models. I dug into property records. The Oakview Lane house had been vacant for months, but the previous tenant name was flagged. Minor reports of animal neglect. No charges filed. Ramirez called the next morning. We ran DNA on the toy. Hair samples matched Loki's. My heart dropped. He was there, I whispered. Ramirez paused. We're pulling traffic cams, but we need more. I glanced at Loki, now lying in a patch of sunlight by the window. He looked up at me, blinked slowly, and then without being called, walked to the front door and sat waiting. I grabbed my keys. We started driving. No plan, no destination, just following the subtle cues. When he sat up straighter, when his ears flicked toward a sound I couldn't hear, when he leaned toward a scent only he could smell. It was almost eerie. On Ridgewood Drive. He began to shake. Low growl, body rigid. I pulled over. Another mailbox cluster. I opened the bottom unit. Empty. But Loki wouldn't stop staring at the house behind it. Single story. Gray siding. White truck in the driveway. He barked. Short, sharp. First bark since I'd met him. That bark wasn't fear. It was recognition. He remembered this place. I sat frozen behind the wheel, heart pounding like I was the one caught doing something wrong. Loki was still locked on that house, ears perked, shoulders stiff, eyes burning through the windshield. He didn't growl again. He didn't need to. That one bark had said it all. I dialed Ramirez. Flagstaff PD, he answered. I think we've got a location. He didn't ask how I knew. By now he trusted Loki's instincts as much as I did. 20 minutes later, a cruiser pulled up behind me. Ramirez stepped out, 2 uniforms at his side. This the place? He asked. Loki's posture hadn't changed, still staring. Yeah, I said quietly. He remembers. They approached the house cautiously. One officer knocked while the others circled around back. A man in his mid-30s opened the door, confusion spreading across his face when he saw the badge. We watched from the truck as the conversation unfolded. At first, shrugs, denials, then something shifted. His shoulders dropped. He glanced past them toward the mailbox. Ramirez turned back toward me and nodded once. It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't innocence either. Loki wed softly. He knows, I murmured. He knows. The officers didn't arrest him. Not yet. They needed more. A warrant, physical evidence. But Ramirez promised, we're not dropping this. We're going to find out how many there were. That night, Loki curled up beside me on the couch, closer than ever before. His body finally relaxed in sleep, chin resting on my leg. And I couldn't help but think, this little German shepherd puppy, barely big enough to fill a mailbox, had done more than survive. He had led us to the front door of something dark, and even if justice wasn't served yet, the light had been turned on. But Loki's journey wasn't over, not even close. The next morning, Loki stood at the door before I even reached for my boots. Tail low, ears alert, head slightly tilted, not begging to go outside, asking. He was ready. So was I. We didn't go far, just around the neighborhood, slow steps along quiet sidewalks. But Loki was different now, more confident. He sniffed every mailbox we passed, sometimes pausing, sometimes moving on, and people started noticing him. Kids on bikes slowed down. One woman crossed the street just to ask, "Is that the puppy from the news?" I hadn't realized it, but the story had spread. Loki's rescue, the mailbox, the survival, the whispers about something darker. I nodded. Yeah, his name's Loki. Her eyes welled up. I'm so glad he made it. So was I. Later that afternoon, we stopped by the shelter I sometimes helped on weekends. The staff already knew. One of them, Julia, dropped to her knees when she saw him. Oh my God, the eyes. He's beautiful. He's strong, I said. She nodded, running a gentle hand down his back. You're not just fostering him, are you? I hesitated. The truth was, I didn't know. Part of me had kept a mental wall up just until he got better. Just until he was safe. But he was safe now. And that wall cracked. He chose me. I finally said, guess I'm just catching up. We sat in the visitation yard for a while. Loki trotted clumsily after butterflies, stopped to bark at a wind chime, then came right back to me like I was the only thing that made sense. Julia sat beside me. Did you ever find out who did it? Not yet, but we're close. Loki helped us find a house. One link to the pattern. You think he remembers? I looked out at him, ears high, tail wagging slow. I think he remembers everything, she smiled, and I think he forgives. Anyway, that night back home, I opened the crate door and left it open. He didn't hesitate. He climbed out, circled once, and curled up at the foot of my bed. Not as a guest, as if he belonged there. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like something in my life made sense again. But I still had one more thing to do. One more piece of this story waiting to be closed. It happened exactly 1 week after Loki barked at that house. Ramirez called me just after sunrise. We got him. I didn't breathe for a second. Search warrant turned up photos, toys, notes, all kinds of stuff. He's in custody. I looked over at Loki, still asleep in his spot at the foot of the bed. His paws twitched in a dream, tail giving a single lazy wag. He's going to be okay, right? I asked. No loopholes. This one's sticking, Tom. The guy's been leaving dogs in mailboxes for years. Most didn't make it, but Loki did, and he led us straight to him. I hung up the phone and sat there in silence, hand resting on Loki's back. A German Shepherd puppy saved lives by surviving. Later that morning, I took him to the shelter one last time. Not for adoption, for something bigger. They'd asked if he could be part of a new awareness campaign. Mail carriers, shelters, even animal control officers would receive training to recognize signs of animal abuse, starting with mailboxes. Loki would be the face of it. He didn't know any of that, of course. But when we stepped onto the shelter lawn and I crouched beside him to fix the little vest around his chest, the one that read survivor, teacher, hero, he stood still like he understood every word. He walked among the crowd like he belonged there, and he did. Cameras clicked. People cried. Children knelt to pet him. One of them whispered, "You're the brave puppy from the story." And he was. But Loki wasn't just a story. He was proof that even the smallest voice trapped in the darkest place can change everything. That night when we got home, I opened the front door and didn't say a word. Loki trotted inside like he owned the place. He hopped onto the couch, his spot now, and curled up like he'd lived there his whole life. I sat beside him, hand resting on his side. "You did it," I whispered. He looked up at me, blinked once, and rested his head on my lap. And for the first time since the day I opened that mailbox, I let myself cry. Not from fear, not from rage, from relief, from pride, from love. The next morning, I filled out the adoption paperwork with a pen that wouldn't stop shaking in my hand. Loki sat beside me in the office at the clinic, his ears perked, tail sweeping slow, steady arcs across the floor. He didn't know what the forms meant, but he knew something was happening. Dr. Saunders looked up from behind the counter. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Tom?" I looked down at the white German Shepherd puppy beside me. 3 months ago, someone had locked him in a mailbox and left him to die. Now he was sitting like a little soldier, calm, watchful, waiting for my cue. I wasn't, I said honestly, but he's been ready since the day he survived. Paperwork signed, signature sealed, and just like that, Loki was officially mine. When we stepped outside, the air was crisp and bright. Loki bounded forward, clumsy and joyful. For a moment, he stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and looked up at me, head tilted. I crouched beside him and whispered, "You're safe for good this time." He leaned into me. That evening, we walked the same route I used to take with the mailbag on my shoulder. I wasn't working that day, but I carried something better, a leash in one hand and a full heart in the other. Neighbors waved, some called his name. He wagged his tail at them, but never left my side. When we passed the mailbox where I found him, Loki paused. I did too. We stood there for a long moment, just looking. Then Loki walked forward. No fear, no hesitation. He had reclaimed it. Later, as the sun dipped below the hills, I sat on the back porch. Loki curled up beside me. The chew toy, that same bright blue one, now sat cleaned on the windowsill inside. A reminder not of cruelty, but of what was overcome. I watched Loki sleep. Those glowing eyes finally closed in peace. And I thought about all the people who'd followed his journey. People who cried for him, rooted for him, prayed for him. People who'd never met him but felt like they knew him because he wasn't just my dog. He was everyone's hope. And I knew somewhere out there, another scared little life might be waiting behind a locked door. But maybe now people would look a little closer, and maybe, just maybe, that door would open in time. Sometimes a story changes more than one life. Loki's began in a place of silence and steel, a locked mailbox under a blazing Arizona sky. But it didn't end there. It didn't end with fear or abandonment. It ended with a choice to listen, a choice to act, a choice to care. There are thousands of German Shepherd puppies like Loki, voiceless, unseen, left in places no living creature should ever be. Some of them make it, many don't, but all of them matter. What Loki taught me, what he teaches everyone who meets him, is that resilience lives in the smallest hearts. That survival is more than instinct, it's courage, it's memory, it's trust earned, not demanded. And it's up to us, people with open eyes and open hands, to protect that courage. I didn't rescue Loki, not really. He saved himself the moment he refused to give up, even when the world locked him away. All I did was open the door. If you've watched his journey, if his eyes stayed with you the way they've stayed with me, then please do something. Support your local shelter, foster, adopt, speak out. Because out there right now, another puppy is waiting. And you might be the one to hear that faint whimper behind a door no one else is willing to open. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. One act of kindness saved Loki's life. Your share, your voice, your compassion could save the next. Don't forget to subscribe.